Omega-3 fatty acids are an essential fatty acid, meaning that our bodies need them. Like we can't actually generate them ourselves. So we need these different forms of omega-3 fatty acids to thrive and live healthy.
Hello, I'm Dr. Wendy Myers. Welcome to the Myers Detox Podcast. And on this show, we talk about everything related to heavy metal and chemical toxicity, the health issues caused by these toxins. We also talk about health in general, nutrition, and we talk about biohacking and my favorite topic, bioenergetics. But today we're going to be talking about omega-3s and creatine as well. But we're going to do a deep dive on why you need to supplement with omega-3. Even if you're eating a lot of fish, you may not be getting enough. We'll talk about how much you need every day, why plant sources don't quite, cut it when it comes to, meeting your needs for omega-3s, why being vegan and vegetarian and taking only vegan or vegetarian sources of omega-3, how you're going to get maybe 10% of what you need in regards to omega-3. And we'll talk about, just different issues around that. And then we also talk about the problem with fish oils, the oxidation, the heavy metal contamination, the cleansing processes, the capsuling processes, and all the different things you want to look for when it comes to buying the right fish oil. We'll also talk about what kind of concentration you need, say, of EPA and DHA and why that matters. We talk about a new study that's come out about how you can extend your life by 5 years by having adequate levels of omega-3, which is really, really shocking. And then we'll talk about creatine as well and all the different benefits of creatine, why it doesn't matter that it's synthetic. I know a lot of people can be concerned about that. We'll talk about the toxins that can be in creatine and why testing for purity is important, and why there's a lot of products on the market that don't have the creatine that they claim, especially the gummies. So lots of really good info on the show today. So our guest today, Oliver Amdrup-Chamby, is the co-founder and CEO of the Danish-based health and food supplement brand Puori. And with more than 15 years of experience, Puori is the front runner in third-party batch testing based on testing all products and final consumer batches for the most known environmental toxins. In the last few years, Puori has pledged to be part of the Transparency Promise driven by the Clean Label Project, a project that gives consumers third-party full transparency on what's actually in their products. And it's a long-term goal of Puori to be part of making environmental testing a regulated process for foods and food supplements considered in the risk group of toxification. Oliver holds a Bachelor in International Business Communication from SDU in Denmark and an executive program from Stanford. And while studying, he started a personal training business called the first CrossFit gym in Denmark in 2006. And 2007, he launched a corporate fitness app, which was acquired 9 months later. And so you can check out his website at puori.com/Wendy if you want to get a very special offer from puori.com. Oliver, thanks so much for coming on the show.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, so you have an amazing line of supplements called Puori supplements, and you rigorously test everything and test it for contaminants and toxins, and that's why I want to have you come on the show to talk about omega-3 supplements. So it's something that a lot of people take. There's a lot of controversy around it, and so, but before we get into that, why don't you talk about why we need to supplement with omega-3 supplements?
I think, yeah, to begin with, omega-3 fatty acids are an essential fatty acid, meaning that our bodies need them. Like we can't actually generate them ourselves. So we need these different forms of omega-3 fatty acids to thrive and live healthy. So they're a key part of our diet. When we look at the diet that we are generally consuming in the Western world, it is low on omega-3 fatty acids. It is probably higher in omega-6 fatty acids and low on omega-3. So those are things you want to balance out because together they actually balance out certain inflammation and pro-inflammation, anti-inflammatory markers in the body. So you definitely want both, but most people are getting way too much omega-6 compared to they're getting way too little omega-3. So that's the first step, I would say.
Yeah, and then we're eating so many seed oils that have omega-6 in them. And I read it's supposed to be about a 1-to-1 ratio, roughly. And in the US, we get 1 molecule of omega-3 to 25 molecules of omega-6. So that's why we deal with so much
It's
inflammation and chronic disease.
Yeah, it's a super diluted, dosage you have there, and I think in general that's what we're seeing in the Western world. So one big part is consuming too little fatty fish. Is definitely not something we do as much, and as you said, the other part is like consuming too much omega-3, sorry, omega-6s from. It can be oils, it can be different foods that we highly processed foods and so on. So
Yeah. And can you talk about for some of those listening that are proponents of, getting your omega-3 from fish or, some people claim, oh, omega-3 fats, you don't want those from supplements because they oxidize, and we'll get into all those points. But what do you say to those people that would say we should just get it from fish where it's naturally occurring?
I think first off, that is a great way to go if you're able to actually get like sardines, anchovies, mackerel, salmon into your diet, those really fatty fish, and get that regularly. Because what we're seeing in a lot of the studies is you need probably around 2,000 milligrams of omega-3 fatty acids on a daily basis to get to what is measured as more optimal levels of omega-3 in your blood or in your body. And you can measure that. So it's not just it should be a good idea, you should do this. We also very different as individuals. So the way we absorb certain things, the way we actually convert the plant omega-3s that we'll get into later on versus the marine omega-3s is very different from people. And so generally the best way to go around it would be to get like a red blood cell omega-3 fatty acid index to see how much omega-3 do I actually have in my body. If I don't have that data and knowing all the, let's say, the macro data out there, as you said before, vast majority, like I would say probably 90% is getting too little omega-3s. So if I don't have access to that, I would still go probably with like, and I didn't want to have enough food, like seafood on a regular basis. That's where a supplement can be a really powerful tool to that supplementing your diet. And that's why we're seeing a lot of people recommending it also because of all these different health benefits that they're seeing if they don't consume fatty fish.
Yeah, and I read that if you eat, like a little portion of salmon, for instance, you're getting about 2 grams or 2,000 milligrams when you eat a piece of salmon. And who is doing that? There's very few people that are consuming a piece of salmon or a can of sardines on a daily basis. And
Exactly.
so if you're not
Yeah.
doing that or you don't want to spend the money to do that, high quality seafood is very expensive. You don't want to be doing farm salmon. That's not going to have the same omega-3 profile, not even close. Then
S-
you need to supplement.
For sure. That at least it's an affordable and efficient way of doing it, if you're looking at it that way. So I agree. And even I love seafood, and I live most of the time in Copenhagen, Denmark, where we tend to consume more seafood. I still see a need for adding fish oil to my diet. And if when I've done my blood work, I would still see a need to do that. Now I most regularly take omega-3 fatty acid, and we'll come back to that in a second, why that is important too, because I've been taking it for many, many years. And when we're looking at the ratios, and this is something I find like very interesting. Recently, we've seen more studies focus also on the longevity of eating enough omega-3 fatty acids in your diet. And one of the recent one I saw, I think was pretty like very, very interesting was Dr. Rhonda Patrick, who was like showing the difference of a smoker versus a person that had a low omega-3 index. So the way they measured the omega-3 index was uh, most Americans is below 4% of like the omega-3 index in their body. And if they got to 8%, that difference would give them the same benefits as if you were a smoker versus a non-smoker. So it was pretty crazy to see those stats. And even on the graphs in the study, they were showing like if you had a smoker that had a high omega-3, they were almost slightly better than the non-smoker that had a low omega-3 when you looked at longevity curves and like death of all-cause mortality, not just like the known we have on heart health and so on, but really like all-cause mortality. And they were looking at that. Like bridging that gap of the omega-3 index up to 8% would probably give you around 5 years on your longevity scale, which is insane when we think about it, right? Like how much impact that is and how little we talk about, having optimal omega-3 levels in our bodies. So yeah, I think that's like a really interesting side component of, omega-3 is part of regulating inflammation. It's part of so many different things. What it's most known for is obviously brain health, heart health, and eye health. Those are the kind of the key things that's been studied the most.
Yeah, and when people have chronic illness, I mean, a lot of the research shows that they need, 2,000, 3,000 milligrams a day of omega-3s to help with their inflammatory conditions, which are the underlying cause of so many chronic diseases today, like MS or heart disease or dementia, whatever's going on with you. You need to reduce that inflammation.
Correct. Yeah. And I think, again, that's where like it is a convenient way of, getting to adequate levels in your body by consuming a high quality omega-3 supplement. And again, I would say it should be a marine based one because breaking down what we talked about briefly before, there's probably three main types of omega-3s. There's definitely more, but when we're looking at it, there's the short chain omega-3 fatty acid called ALA, which is the one you get from plant, flax seeds, walnuts. Most people don't get enough of that either. And then there's the more like the marine based ones called DHA and EPA, which you get from the fatty fish and generally. I could even get it from other sources as well, but that will be probably the best sources to get it from. And when we look at that, getting it into your body, it's actually way easier for the body to use the EPA DHA compared to the ALA. And it varies quite a lot how good people are converting because the ALA, like the short chain omega-3 fatty acids, the body actually needs to convert. Whereas that's also why we see like more like vegetarian or vegans or people who are not eating fish, they see a harder time reaching an optimal omega-3 fatty acid level in their body, where supplementation might make even more sense. And again, if you're really not into it, you could go the algae route. So you avoid, let's say, fish. We'll touch on that a little later on why there's it's still harder and it's way more expensive to get an adequate amount of omega-3 out of algae. So I think science will evolve a lot there in the future, but right now it's still a very costly serving of omega-3 per gram, basically.
And now a word from one of our sponsors. Two of the most powerful supplements for women's health are whey protein and creatine. Studies show that women have about 70 to 80% lower natural creatine stores than men, which impacts our muscle function, muscle recovery, our brain functioning, and even our mood. Puori Creatine Plus combines pure creatine monohydrate with taurine to support muscle strength, performance, muscle recovery, faster workout recovery, and cognitive health as well. And I love the results of taking creatine. I honestly had never taken creatine before in my life, before I started taking the Puori creatine, and I absolutely love its effect on my mental clarity. And it is also especially beneficial for both pre and post-menopausal women as well. It's shown in research to support bone health, improve cortisol response, support thyroid function, and so much more. And like everything that Puori makes, each batch of Creatine Plus is third-party tested for over 200 harmful contaminants, and it's clean certified by the Clean Label Project as well. So you're only getting clean, safe ingredients. And the test results are published online for complete transparency. All you have to do is scan the QR code on the bottle. Now let's talk about whey protein. So protein is essential for women. A lot of people are not getting enough protein. And many protein powders on the market are loaded with toxins and heavy metals and harmful contaminants. But the Clean Label Project reviewed over 160 top-selling protein powders in the US and found that 47% exceeded California Prop 65 safety limits for lead, with 21 containing double the acceptable amount. And so that's horrifying when you think about it and how many people are drinking protein shakes daily, believing that they're doing something healthy. And so that's why I use and trust Puori's PW1 whey protein. I absolutely love the vanilla flavor. It tastes incredible. I love the dark chocolate also. Like it tastes like a fancy chocolate milk, but it's clean and safe, not like a lot of other cacaos and chocolate products on the market. And my daughter Winter, loves the vanilla flavor. She loves making smoothies. And recently, Vogue also named Puori PW1 whey protein the best overall whey protein powder. And for all the right reasons, if you ask me. Like I said, my daughter's making smoothies daily, and I have peace of mind knowing that she's using this protein powder that's clean, pure, and safe, and it's been tested for purity. And so here's how I use the PW1 and the creatine every morning. I make a shake with coconut water, a scoop of the PW1 protein and the creatine plus, and I add berries, maybe a banana, some dates, a little pinch of salt. And that helps me stay strong, focused, and energized throughout the day. And I know that I feel good knowing that I'm fueling my body with truly clean supplements. And so go feel the difference for yourself. Taste the difference also. Go to puori.com/Wendy and use code Wendy at checkout for 20% off. Again, that's puori.com/Wendy. And that code even works on your already discounted subscriptions, giving you almost a third off of the regular price. So don't wait. Go try the PW and the Creatine Plus today. Clean, science-backed supplements that you can actually trust. Again, go to puori.com/Wendy and use coupon code Wendy. Yeah, and there's that conundrum where, people that are vegan and vegetarian, they need their omega-3s, and many of them, they're doing the E3 Live, they're doing the algaes, but and as you said, those have a far reduced capacity to convert to DHA. But plus, I've read that they have issues with that conversion. They have to have certain cofactors and enzymes, and those are reduced in the diet of people that are vegan and vegetarian. So even if they're consuming these plant sources, they're consuming their E3 Live, et cetera, they have a dramatically reduced ability to convert that to DHA. And so therein lies a big problem where that's why their brains are smaller. I mean, the research shows they have smaller brains. They can, vegans especially, have issues with their nervous system and the fatty coating, the myelin sheath, because they're just not getting the fats that they need. And I think that's the biggest problem with the diet, is just not getting the animal fats and the fat soluble vitamins and things that they need to be able to function optimally.
Sure. And even though you can get some of them through algae, like where they can actually concentrate it as well, as you mentioned before, but what we've seen is some of these algae still has to tend to go really rancid. And I think that's another topic to dive into. And I would almost, if I start with the omega-3 that most commonly used is fish oil. So it's coming from fish. It can come from a variety of fish, but what you really want is the smallest fatty fish in the food chain that you can get, for environmental perspective as well, both from a reproduction cycle, but also from environmental toxins, as we know, can creep into our food chain, and especially fish in the ocean, and pretty much everywhere, unfortunately. But so that's a way to mitigate getting kind of the cleanest starting point. So the starting point is important, obviously, highest quality of fish and so on. From there on, there's actually a lot of things that can go wrong. So I normally say there's 3 key things in a fish oil supplement or an omega-3 supplement you want to be aware of. One is active ingredient. So the active ingredient is the EPA DHA. So when you look at a bottle of fish oil, it can say 30% concentration of omega-3s, or it can say 80%, or it can say anything in between. But it's obvious that if you have a 30% concentration of omega-3s, you get way less of the active ingredients compared to a higher concentrated form. And that's the main reason why you're consuming this type of product. So active ingredient is key. Some brands will say you just need 1 capsule, but if 1 capsule is, let's say, 800 milligram, you're not getting even at 80%, you're not getting, close to the 2 grams or 2000 milligrams of EPA DHA that you want to maybe aim for. So that's the other side of it. The second leg is obviously purity. So where is this fish coming from? What has gone on to the environment that the fish has been living in? Like, is there any PCBs or dioxins in there? Is there heavy metals, mercury, or what we tend to find in fish? All these different things. Even we've seen pesticides and other residue that we test for through the Clean Label Project and IFAS. So we've seen different things sneak in. So you want to make sure that it's something when you're consuming on a daily basis from a food source that that can be polluted. You want to make sure it's clean. And then the last component, and probably one of the hardest component for the brands and everyone out there, and even for consumers, that is the oxidation side of it. how fresh is this oil when you're consuming it at home, right? Like how fresh is the product that you have on your hands? And that's also a data point. So you can measure that in Totox. There's different values underneath that you're measuring, but basically, if you can find a Totox product that is below 19, that's IFOS, International Fish Oils, benchmark standards to receive their 5-star award, and below, you have a fairly fresh product on hand. In our end, we try to aim around, 6, and I would say we find many products in the market that's closer to 50, where I would say I'm not really sure if they're even safe for human consumption when you get such a rancid omega-3 in there. So the 3 points really to look for, and those are data points. But most brands don't share them, and you don't have access to it. So if you really want to compare, fish oils to fish oils, because I'll be a very happy man if I had $1 every time someone said, like, fish oil is fish oil, isn't it? Isn't fish all the same? It's just a capsule, you're not really tasting it, you're just swallowing it. I'll tell you, there's so much that goes into protecting it from oxidation, starting with that high quality of fish, and then obviously the purity side. So those are the 3 key legs that you want to aim for.
Yes, and when I stopped taking fish oil a really long time ago. I started taking it again with your fish oil because I trust your brand and everything that you're doing, and how meticulous you are with your production and your testing, et cetera, et cetera. But in the past, I used to take a lot of fish oil because it's just, you just hear about it so much and all the benefits of omega-3. But I did a test one time. I put a needle into the capsule and I smelled it, and it was so the smell was so horrifying. It was absolutely rancid. And after that, I just never took fish oil again. I thought, I'm just going to get it from fish. I'm good here. Like, and there
Yeah.
was just something like I just didn't want to take it. I just couldn't put it in my mouth. And it was just my body screaming to me to please stop taking it. But can you talk about, why the fish oil goes rancid, and why so many brands have this oxidation issue?
Yes, and I think I also want to just make a connection because we call like our fish oil like the fish oil of sushi. So you would never go into a sushi restaurant and eat something that was like extremely smelly when you're talking fresh fish like that, like that experience you had with a capsule. And so many people are getting that experience, or like horrible fish burps or something like that, where it comes from these really super rancid fish oils. Unfortunately, the industry know that as well. So some brands also do something to mask that. They're adding a lot of tough, either even coating to the capsule or flavor component into the oil, like so different ways of masking it. So where does oxidation come from? At first point, it comes from the production process. Like again, if you start with a semi-fresh fish, you start with something that's already on its way to rancid. So if you start high quality fish, obviously that's a good starting point. Then when you go through, there's a molecular distillation process involved in fish oil, which is obviously have to done under super scrutinous, environment in order to minimize oxygens coming in to the barrels or whatever where they're touching, like other elements on their way to a capsule. Then there's the capsulation process, and I think that's probably one of the trickiest parts for them. Really making sure that when they capsule that little gelatin capsule into it, that they do not get too much oxygen in that process. And then finally, there's all the transportation from manufacturer to the store, like distributor to whatnot, and then all the way back to the home that we live in. There's so many touch points of heat, light, oxygen that can touch the fish. And I think that's where it goes wrong. But as you can see, there's so many layers, and it can go almost exponentially wrong if you do that down the path. And that's also why we think it's so important that is not like the test results on oxidation is not just coming from brands when they publish them. They're coming from third parties like IFOS or Clean Label Project, but IFOS when it comes to oxidation, because they do an incredible job of testing the finished good. So the actual bottle that is standing on shelf or that's ordered on a web shop or on Amazon, that's the product they test. And when they test that product, you have that like real product capsule that you've been testing, you get the closest to what the consumer will face. Obviously, there's things that like even if we wanted to, and trust me, we want to sometimes control, let's say, the last delivery. Like how did UPS handle it from our warehouse to you? and we've put in everything we could in our end. But that's where, especially in summertime, there's more to be aware of when you're living, let's say, living in a very hot or warm climate where a UPS truck could be standing outside for a period of time where they don't have air conditioner on or something like that. Those are things we can't mitigate. But if we see anybody who is just like somewhat of an experience like that in our end, we will refund you and send something new, because most often it's part of that ecosystem we can't control, and we're not yet there hand delivery around US, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you ask in our company, I'm sure. So
Yes, and let's talk about the toxins in fish oil as well,
mhm.
because mercury is obviously a big concern in fish. But in migratory fish, there's also problems with the cadmium and nickel, and it's not just mercury, though mercury, is the big red flag. But can you talk about that and maybe some of the issues? Does the fish oil get damaged anyway by the purification process, or there are better purification processes than others?
There's definitely a better purification. We've seen with working with different suppliers over time that some people are just better at keeping oxidation levels down when they're purifying it. So I think there's definitely something in that side. When we look at the fish, again, coming back to the source, where are you actually catching that fish? So what source is it? Many think that, okay, a Nordic country like, the Nordic Scandinavia, something like that's the best place to catch fish. But we are actually not actually always recommending people to eat a lot of fish from the local oceans around Scandinavia. So what we've seen is the coast of Chile has the by far purest fish, and we can actually fish anchovies, almost anchovies only. We also sometimes use sardines and small fish like that. But when we've used the anchovies and we've used them from there, that's where we see the best results. And it's big schools of fish. So you can fish. You have like a fast reproductive society, so they can also be friend of the sea certified, which is an environmental certification to ensure that they don't overcatch. But at the same time, we've seen the best stats that we've seen from fish oil from around the world coming from there.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. So let's talk about capsules versus like the gelatin caps or liquid fish oil. So, and there's a lot of different choices there. Can you talk about those and which are ideal?
So first off, I like there's even gummies right now with fish oil in, and I would probably stay away from them for now, like because I have no idea how they would actually be able to again keeping that environmental staple in a gummy over time for oxidation side of it, and the amount of omega-3 you actually squeeze into that, knowing how much omega-3 is actually inside a capsule, it's pretty hard. So let's say we focused on the liquid form and the capsule form. The capsule form has one big, if the capsulation process is done right, and it's done in the right, like the right temperature, the right crispness of the capsule, and so on, to protect the capsule from oxidizing, like the oil from oxidizing when you're encapsulating it, then it has the effect that when you open the bottle, the oil inside the capsules won't get oxygened as the days go by, especially if you keep it in like a nice, like a climated controlled area, not in direct sunlight, maybe even in a fridge if you're living in a very hot place and you don't have air conditioning. But in a controlled environment, you would see a fairly stable product even after 2 years of shelf life. If you look at a liquid fish oil, and we can actually sometimes make a fresher liquid fish oil because the capsulation process is hard. So when you have the bottle, but when I open the bottle, it's almost impossible not to get oxygen ongoing into that bottle after each serving. So you take it out of the fridge, you use it, you maybe let it leave there for a little, you go back in and so that opening and closing process, what we've seen in different environments of testing oxidation levels, we've seen that Rancid just goes pretty through the roof after, 21 days, 30 days, and so on. So people need to be very quick on using the liquid fish oil to really ensure that by the time they have it in their fridge, that environment again is something we have hard time controlling. But at the time when they get to that, they will still have a good high quality product, even 30 days in, or how long it will take them to go through a bottle. That would be my main reason for recommending the capsule, because again, I feel like we can control better what you, the end user, is getting at the day of consumption versus with the liquid fish oil. That being said, we still use liquid fish oil. We still see people buying liquid fish oil. We don't have a liquid fish oil in the US. We have in Europe. But in Europe, we're still seeing, maybe 10% of our customers that are like leaning towards that because they're using it in larger doses. Also, maybe they're adding it to food with their kids. They're doing different things to really, add omega-3 to their diet. I do say that you can cut up fairly easy, and that's even what I'm doing at home, a capsule. Like if you don't want, you can like make a you want to poke a small hole, as you said, because even though it's fresh, you'll still get fishy fingers if you kind of get that oil all over the place over time, because it will start to oxidize on you, no matter what. So,
And now a word from one of our sponsors of the Myers Detox podcast. So I want to tell you about a lip peptide treatment that I've been using, and I've gotten amazing results. And it was created to help you restore smoothness, fullness, and lasting hydration to your lips while protecting against visible signs of aging and environmental stress. And what I love most about this lip peptide treatment is that it contains True Energy's signature proprietary biophoton frequencies to enhance cellular communication, optimize ingredient absorption, support collagen production, and helps lips maintain their smooth, fuller appearance over time. Something I'm really into right now at age 53. And honestly, I can't ever see myself using any kind of skincare unless it has frequencies in it that enhances its effectiveness and sends new information to your skin and to your lips to improve their appearance. So this True Energy peptide contains plant-based botanical oils, vegan moisture-sealing waxes, and a collagen-boosting clinically studied peptide infused with True Energy's signature frequencies to condition, smooth, and energize lips for a healthier, more youthful appearance. And each ingredient is also sourced to meet high purity standards and doesn't contain any synthetic fragrances, parabens, toxic ingredients, or harsh petrochemicals. So if you're ready to smooth away the look of fine lines around your lips, maintain lasting softness and hydration without stickiness, enhance natural lip volume and contour, protect against dryness, flaking, and environmental damage, and energize your own lips repair and renewal cycles, True Energy is offering a BOGO special, so you can buy one, get one free for a limited time for my listeners only. So go to trytrueenergy.com/Wendy3. So it's TRYTRUENERGY.com/Wendy3 to get a buy one, get one offer. This is something that I use every single night. I absolutely love this product. Highly, highly recommend it. Yeah, and fish, it smells like fish.
fish smells like
You can't
fish.
avoid that.
No, it's impossible.
Yes. And so what I really love about your brand and what sets you apart from so many other supplement companies out there is you have a QR code on all of your products that you can scan, and you can see all the many different testing that you've done, the third-party testing, the Clean Label project. Can you talk about that in regards to your fish oil?
Yes, and I think our fish oil has been on the market since 2010, so it's we've been around for some time. And when we launched the brand, it was with that like exact. We had that consumer experience ourselves, that we were standing in a store trying to buy a product, and everybody said to us like, when you buy fish oil, make sure that it's clean and fresh, and that it has high omega-3. And we were like, that's a data point. The omega-3 was the only thing you could see on label, if you trusted the label. So that's a second story. We don't want to dive into that today. But I think so the other parts like purity and oxidation, there was no way of figuring out. And we were calling the brands, we were like going in all different directions to try and figure out the nerdy consumer we were at the time really wanted to understand, which product to choose, which one was the best, because it sure had to be a data point. And I think that laid the foundation when we thought that there was not really any brands doing that. And still many years later, there's only a few brands doing it the way we're doing. And with the clean label promise that we'll come back to in a second, there's no people still, like we're the only brand, unfortunately, who does the full QR code, which means every single batch of every single product will not be released to public before there's either clean label project that has tested and uploaded lab reports on the actual product, or IFA's certification on the product. And again, we will for the fish oil, we're doing both actually. But so that's the QR code that we put on the label, and we believe that's a data point that not all consumers will test and scan. They won't use their phone and do that every single time, but it gives that foundation of trust and credibility that you can build on And as if you are like someone like you recommending to other people and people are talking about it, having that security on what's actually in the product, we think that's it, like it's a no-brainer that that's the future of supplementation with potentially natural ingredients or not natural ingredients that have a risk of either contamination, oxidation, or even not meeting label claim. Which I'm almost smiling when I say it's not fun, but it's incredible to see how many is like, and also how many times we've been suggested, like, why do you put like, you don't have to put 80% concentration in when you can actually do a little less because there's a label claim gap, right? Like, but yeah, that's a different story. Mm.
Yeah, and that's what I love about your products. That's why I recommend them. That's why I want to have you come on the show because, you just go the extra mile, the extra expense to do all this testing and have this complete transparency. And you just don't see that with a lot of companies these days. So let's talk about creatine. So again, creatine is another one of those categories that it's very, very popular. It's growing in popularity. There's a lot of great research out there about creatine. So can you tell us, why people should be adding creatine to their supplement regimen and their smoothies, et cetera?
Yes, I think for more and more reason, it seems like every other month now that new studies are coming out in different directions. But I think what we've seen for very long time, for like almost generations, we've been looking at creatine, especially for muscle health. So we've seen its effect in adding that energy source for explosive, training regimen, whether it's like the sprinting or heavy lifting and so on. We've seen measurable effect in the body of adding creatine to your diet from a supplement. So that's where it's been used the most. But that also makes so much sense when you're not just looking at sport and like bodybuilding communities. It makes so much sense when you look at healthy aging muscle over time. Being able to work out more, actually do a little extra set will increase your strength, will increase your body mass by adding that extra little piece of power basically to the puzzle. So we've seen a lot of promising, health effect, coming downstream of just having enough healthy skeletal muscle in your body, which is easier if you're consuming creatine and working out. Um, the other side is brain health, and I think it's still fairly new, and it's fairly limited what you can actually say. But I can say a lot of the different indications that people are seeing is, very positive cognitive function in everything from, post trauma, from getting hit to a head like a concussion to sleep deprivation. You've seen groups that has been sleep deprived and then have added like a higher dose of creatine. We're talking 20 grams, and where the most recommended doses are probably around 5, even 3 in Europe. 3 to 5 ish has been most of the test on the sports side, but for the brain health, those tests has been slightly higher. um so yeah, energy production for the brain, staying sharp, being alert, all of those things we're starting to see more and more of. And they're even starting to do smaller studies onto, Alzheimer and various cognitive decline diseases that we're seeing as well in the population. So I think it's a very promising ingredient. I think for those who've tried and played with it themselves, now I know we go into something that's total anecdotal, but when you've played with it yourself, you feel the difference in your strength training or your explosive burst, even the recovery. And even if you play with the higher dose, you might sometimes even feel the difference in your late afternoon cognitive function or post jet lag or something like that where you're playing with it. So I've been playing with it quite a lot for myself as well, which were recommended to me by a brain scientist when I had a concussion several years ago. So I was starting to play with larger doses, and I think there's a lot of promising on this, on this fairly inexpensive compound.
Well, I'm happy for these athletes that are trying to improve their performance, but I think for a lot of women, especially perimenopausal, especially menopausal women, really need that assistance and that boost in their muscle formation, in brain functioning. Because after 5 years of being in menopause, women can lose 30% of the electrical flow to their brain, and that's why they see the reduction in cognitive functioning and many other numbers start going downhill. So creatine can be especially helpful for them. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, and I think when we talked about that like muscle component, we know that when you're, aging, you're losing muscle over time. So if you have a compound, I think you might actually feel even more benefit when you're, let's say, an aging population that is starting to work out, adding creatine versus, let's say, the bodybuilder or the super athlete that's already like dialed in on a lot of different regimens and so on. So I would say, I think it's one of the things that, again, when we recommend it, when we've seen it in, you know, perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, like when we've seen all these different stages, that's one of the products we get most positive feedback on afterwards, that they feel their muscles are getting stronger. They feel like extra energy levels during the day and so on. So I think, again, whether it's because creatine by itself, it's not like it's a protein that it will create like an anabolic effect in the body and give you something, but creatine will give you that extra, like let's say 10% increase in your workload capacity in strength training. And that 10% increase will push you, like, so if you're doing, let's say, a squat exercise as a, middle-aged or even older woman, that you're doing those 10% will give you several more reps of weight under tension. And that extra rep will give you much more like hypertrophy, all the different things that you're looking for on the muscle side of it. So if you can, I think it's the downstream of you being able to actually do more that has probably the biggest effect on, the hormonal status, yeah, the ability to actually work out.
Yeah, and I also read that if you say you have a bad night of sleep, that taking creatine can improve your brain function like 30%, something absolutely huge. Like you can regain your cognitive function even if you've had a bad night of sleep. And so I have those nights, and so I definitely take creatine on the days that I haven't slept very well.
For sure. And you're playing around with it for a lot of like, are you on a podcast? You need to be more on alert. There's different time zone travels. That's where you can play with it. I think there's a lot to be, yeah, to play around with. And it's a fairly inexpensive, and if you choose a high quality brand, pretty trusted source, it's a pretty decent supplement to play around with.
I want to say a couple words about one of our Myers Detox podcast sponsors, Qualia Senolytic. So it's a cutting edge formula designed to help your body eliminate senescent cells, also known as zombie cells. So these outdated cells, they hang around, draining your energy and slowing your workout recovery and causing all kinds of havoc and mayhem. So, backed by clinical research, Qualia Senolytic uses 9 plant-based compounds that support joint comfort, sharper focus, and better aging naturally. And here's the kicker: you only have to take it 2 days a month. Simple, backed by science, validated by research. You can try it risk-free with a 100-day money-back guarantee. Go to qualialife.com/Wendy. That's QUALIA life.com/Wendy and use code Wendy to get 15% off. You want to try Qualia Senolytic. This is something that I've been taking. It's part of my anti-aging protocol because getting older doesn't have to feel like it. And can you talk about the fact that it's synthetic? Because this is, obviously be concerning to some people out there. Can you talk about the nature of that and why it needs to be synthetic, and maybe why, you don't really need to be so concerned about that?
Yeah, I think when we look at like creatine monohydrate, which is the key form of creatine that is used in all the different studies. So basically, that's the one I would go with. When you look at creating that, it's something that your body actually creates in your liver and a few other places in your body, but it's probably not more than 1 to 2 grams a day. So adding it, you can get creatine from your diet, like you can get it from red meat and shellfish, and again, a lot of different areas. But it's hard to get like 5, 10 grams or whatever people are trying to hit. So in that regard, when you then look at creating it in the lab, it's basically it's different from, let's say, a protein powder where you're concentrating a natural source. So you can actually control the environment even more when you're doing it synthetically like that. So it's basically as how would you describe that process the easiest way? Like even if you think of a fermentation process, something that you control in an environment where you can actually create the creatine monohydrate. It doesn't come from, a concentrated beef liver or something like that. So when you have that product and you add it into your body, it will react exactly like if you're eating it from a food source. It wouldn't be any different because it's the exact same form that the body is working with. So you can add it that way. That also means that you can control the environment. If you have a good, clean environment to begin with, quality water, quality facility, which is, I would say, very important. Also, now we're seeing creatine is really, it's taking off, which means there's a lot of different things coming on the market when you're seeing a supplement like that taking off in many different directions. So I would definitely look for a product that has like GMP certification, like it's under these GMP certified, which is good manufacturing practice, um, basically pharma standards of how to run the facility that is producing it. That's one side of it, to be aware of. Again, with the transparency project where we test every single batch, in consumer batch in the end, what are the things I could be worried of finding in a product from the contamination? Could there be any cross contamination in the processing? Could there be, heavy metal residue from the machinery or anything else? Could there be residual solvents through that process? Those are the things we're looking the most for. Or microbial. Is there anything like that that is touched? So again, high quality facility and a third party testing in the end, that will give you the trust and credibility to be able to consume that on a daily basis, ongoing. That's at least what this studies are showing.
Yeah, and then there's a problem with there not being the creatine that's claimed on the bottle. So I think you have to be very careful about buying by a price on Amazon. There's a lot of Chinese manufacturers. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, what are my thoughts on that? So I am like, I think I saw recently somebody who was running a creatine. They were taking several different creatine gummies through a lab to see what are actually in these gummies, like how much creatine is actually in there. And like I kid you not, but some of the brands that they found has less than 1% of what they were claiming in the gummy. So you're eating gummies, basically. That's what you're getting. I think it's a little like with the real creatine monohydrate powder. I would be more worried about the impurities of, a poor manufacturing facility, the cross contamination that could happen in that process. So I would really pick something that is, GMP certified, so that like the brand works on a GMP certification, because that normally sets a standard that the facility where this has been produced, they live up to like pharmaceutical cleaning standards, all the standards around the machinery and so on. So that's something they can't, move around with. And then again, if I had the opportunity to work with a brand or buy a brand where there's a QR code on the back where I can scan and see active ingredients by a third party, I can see if there's residual solvents, I can see if there's any traces of heavy metals in there. That's, again, when something I'm consuming on a daily basis, which is sound like, on all the studies that are coming out, this is something people are consuming a day in and day out. That's where I would really care about the purity and the quality of the brand that I'm consuming.
Yeah, and can you talk about dosing? What would be a good kind of like a beginning loading dose and a maintenance dose?
So there's a lot of talk on dosing as well. And I think from without knowing like the person that is starting on creatine, I would recommend like the 3 to 5 grams dosage, in a serving, probably in water or something like that. Some fairly simple. You can mix it into pretty much anything. It's a fairly stable matter, but I would probably take it in water and in the morning if I could, or around my workout. Like that would probably be it. Another thing we tend to hear is, I get GI issues. It distresses my gut a little bit when I consume this. Again, if you're going up to a larger dose for any reason that you're like decided on, or with your health practitioner you're working with, I would again suggest maybe going in smaller intervals. Back in the days of bodybuilding, it was more common to say you load yourself up, you take like 20 or 30 grams a day in the beginning, and then you kind of saturate the cells faster. And it looks like there's evidence that that might be the case. But if you look after 3 months, you're getting there by you keeping a maintenance dose. So that's why most of the studies are showing these 3 to 5 gram doses. And I think that's 5 gram is maximum we can recommend as a brand, on packaging as well. So that's what we would do.
That makes more sense to me. I'm not a fan of high dosing supplements, especially in the beginning when
Oh,
your body's just you don't know how you're going to react. So
no,
I'm much more a fan of just going low and slow and
yeah,
just
that's
titrating up.
that's what I would do. And then I would, since it might give you some gut or GI distress, I think it's very low amount of people. If you're getting a high quality product, I think some of those distress can come from the flavor component, the weird things that tend to be in a lot of these creatine powders as well. So that's a different story, obviously. But so if you're building and just working with a like a clean, simple ingredient like the Puori creatine, I would just mix it in water and then I would go and I would see how it feel, but I wouldn't take it around, let's say, coffee in the morning, because then you might adding extra strain. So you could mix it in if there's a little bit more of a food feel to it. But I feel like at least that's something that I feel for myself. If I have like empty stomach, cup of coffee, and a lot of creatine, I'm doing multiple things that might play a little bit with my stomach. So I would definitely just say, you know, take it in a sip of water, and I can do now like larger doses without feeling any GI distress at all. So go slow, as you said. That's how you want to start out in supplement. Take that dose; it's recommended on the label, and then like go from there. And if you like start to want to play with different benefits from like post jet lag and so on, you can always split up. So you do like half an hour and you do 3 servings instead of doing it all at once if you want to kind of see how you feel.
Okay, great. I also saw one video where it was saying the best way to take creatine is to dissolve it in warm water or kind of a hotter water so that it dissolves really, really nicely. And then you can put that into your smoothie or just drink it like that and it just absorbs better. I don't know if that's true, but
I haven't seen any particularly in that, but that could be something out there. Again, there's a lot of stuff going on in this field right now. So I think the key here is consistency, and I think that is with a lot of so find a routine that you can keep. Like we talk about that for like meal timing or magnesium timing or all these different things that can make like a few percentage improvement for sure for some. But if you if you miss 1 or 2 days a week, you're already like 20x% out the gate. Instead of if you kept like a consistent routine of, taking it in the morning, which I would recommend, especially if it also has these cognitive effects for you. You take it in the morning, with your glass of water as a shot in your smoothie, however you prefer doing that in the morning. Consistency would build on that.
okay, great. Well, Oliver, why don't you tell us where we can get your products, the name of the omega-3 and the creatine product that you talked about today, and anything else you want to share with us?
I think the key for you, and you know that as well, when we worked together for some time, but I think like pure means pure origin. Like we're trying to source everything from the cleanest pure origin we can, whether it's a raw ingredients from a fish or a protein powder or the creatine. And then we provide that lab data, like certainty for end consumers, that they can always find lab reports on the actual end product, the finished goods that's out there. That's what Pure is all about. We try to do the common supplements uncommonly well. So you won't see like the newest ingredient coming out of the gate from us, but you'll see the ingredients that has like highly, like a lot of evidence behind them. They're heavy evidence based, and there's a risk of contamination, and our consumers are asking for it. That's the product that you'll see from us. So that's where we come from. And Puri, it sounds harder to say, like, or harder to spell than this, but it's puori.com. So it comes from Pure Origin. That's where you'll find us. I know you have a site as well that you can go through, /Wendy, I think, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can go to
Yeah.
puori.com/Wendy. You can get, I think it's 20% off
On the
using
product?
coupon code Wendy also.
Exactly, and it will say there on your landing page. So that's where you can find more. I think again, coming back to what do we want to see in the future of supplementation, we want to see the products where there's a high risk of contamination, whether it's the protein powder category we've seen with alarming stats on heavy metals in protein powders, or the every new product that's popping up now and then. What we want to see is that eventually these high risk products, they have a third party tested, and eventually it's not from Clean Label Project or something we are running as a brand. It's something that is mandatory by a third party, like we've seen in baby food with the AB 899 out of California and Maryland, where it's actually now mandatory for baby food brands to have heavy metal testing available on the batch level for the if you want to sell in those states. And I think if baby food can get there, and we know that, let's say in protein powders, half of America's best-selling protein powders it has levels of heavy metals above Proposition 65. When we know those facts, we need to do more for the people who are trying to buy, a quality, they're buying a protein powder to stay healthy or a creatine they're not buying it as their guilty pleasure. It is supposedly something they're doing for their health. And I think that's where like we can help hopefully show the way and, show others that it can be done to have this type of transparency and, consumers can trust the brands that they do and then create really good relationships over time. So yeah, that's the dream. That's the push that we're doing. That's why we've been around for quite some time, and we expect to be around for quite some time. We always joke about, hey, in 3 years, this will be mandatory and everybody's going to do it. But it is a slow machine to get moving, and that, having spent a lot of time in detoxification, just understanding how we get these things out of our bodies and where it comes from and so on. Like it's.
So for anyone listening that really wants to detox their body, go to heavymetalsquiz.com. I created a quiz for you. It only takes a couple of seconds. Based on some lifestyle questions, you can get your toxicity score and get a free video series that answers all of your frequently asked questions about how to detox your body. Check it out, heavymetalsquiz.com. I think the labeling on supplements is going to be a very slow-moving train. You're very ahead of your time, well ahead of your time in that regard. So I think it's very expensive to do that. It's very, like, you test the ingredients before they even get put into the final product. You test the final product. You throw out ingredients if they don't meet your standards. And, it's just not an expense that a lot of companies are going to go to. It just isn't.
But still, I think when there's like, at least we shouldn't do it all over the place because that's going to be too much. And, we shouldn't be greenwashing this either, but we should take those high risks, right? Like where we know there is, like with protein powder, there's some things we need to just do. And I believe we'll get there. So we'll keep pushing, and we can see there's more and more people following in that direction. So it's exciting to see, and brands. Yeah. And
Yes,
brands.
yes. Well, Oliver, thanks so much for coming on the Myers Detox podcast. It's always a pleasure talking to you. And everyone, thanks for tuning in to the Myers Detox podcast. I'm Dr. Wendy Myers, and I love bringing experts from around the world to help you, make those discernments, make those distinctions, help you to up level your health, answer all your questions about health, just getting there, one step at a time. Rome wasn't built in a day. There's a lot to learn on all these various topics. So I'm here to help you make those upgrades. So thanks for tuning in.
The Myers Detox Podcast is created and hosted by Wendy Myers. This podcast is for information purposes only. Statements and views expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Wendy Myers and the producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.